Welcome back. I've got Daryl Black on the line. Daryl, how are you?
I am doing very well, thank you.
Really good to have you here. And as I kind of alluded to in our pre-show call, or chat a moment ago, is like it's going to sound like we're singing from the same hymn book, but there's going to be, yeah, I agree. But I'm always wanting to get perspectives from other people on different things. So why don't you share a little bit about you, and then we'll jump into the conversation.
Yeah, I appreciate that. First and foremost, Michael, kudos to you for the platform. And I know it's hard work, it's tireless, it's thankless, it's all of the things. And so I just wanted to acknowledge the time and the effort that you've been putting into. So yeah, I started the journey a very, very long time ago. Gosh, 30 some years ago, and I was in volunteer search and rescue, and at the time in IT project management. And I guess probably a really telling place to start would be I remember getting a phone call from law enforcement as search and rescue volunteer SAR, and there was a tornado that had ripped through a campground in central Alberta, the province where I'm from, where I live. And it was as many as I think it was 100 to 150 people missing and presumed deceased. And so we respond down and it was, but yeah, it was about an hour. I go get the briefing. I hadn't seen the site yet, and just the way it was set up, it's kind of at the top of a hill, and then the campground's on the bottom. So I did see the lake, and across the lake was the trees. The tornado had cut just a quote unquote perfect swath right through these trees. You could see it. So I get my briefing, and my job is it's called a division, a particular part of the campground to go search it and all those things, and I hadn't seen it yet. And I thought, oh, okay, I get my briefing. I'm going to go talk to some folks now, and we're going to get at this. So I walked the crest of the hill, and it hit me. It took my breath away. I'm just looking at the destruction, and it was, campground was absolutely devastated, at least a particular part of it. And I remembered then, or I now remember that it was just the thought of, wow, like this is something. And I took a couple of deep breaths and got to work. And that led me down the path of leadership on a larger scale, on the corporate side and all of that, to really figure out what can I do to rinse and repeat for situations just like this. Because while it's not a tornado, corporations and business and entrepreneurship and public safety are all grappling with the same kind of things: the uncertainty, the stress, the um, emotional part of leadership. How do we get a bunch of people moving in the same direction? All of these other things. And so I really doubled down on what does it actually look like to have a process and processes that allow me to rinse and repeat and handle these kinds of things. And here I am all this time later.
Well, it's amazing backstory to kind of, lay the foundation for the work that you do today. And as you're talking about that disaster scene, it reminded me, and my parents lived in Florida for over a quarter century, and they moved there shortly after Hurricane Andrew, I believe it was Andrew, that basically destroyed Hollywood, Florida, and other parts of Florida. It was devastating. Nowhere near to what Katrina did, but at the time it was a pretty big deal. And I had spent a little bit of time down there working for an IT and accounting in insurance agency. So, they were obviously, that was a common topic for several years, was, the claims and everything that happened. And I was talking to somebody that was from that area that, the hurricane, caused damage through. And, thankfully their house wasn't damaged. They somehow withstood the storm, and their house still stood. But, the surrounding neighborhoods around them, all the way to, and they were like kind of deep within a subdivision. So basically, the storm had pretty much destroyed all the homes, ripped out the street signs. Some of the roads were damaged and things like that. And the homeowner said, for the first couple of days, I had to get my bearings straight to figure out how do I get to the main street, because there were no markers to kind of indicate where to go. And it was this weird, surreal feeling. And I thought about that, and you see storm, damage on the news from time to time. It's, a 30-second clip, and then, they go on to the next story kind of thing. But you look at that and you go, okay, that's so disruptive in so many different just, it's almost beyond comprehension, the devastation that that causes and the complete upheaval of people's lives. Not just, okay, where are we going to sleep tonight kind of thing, or where are we going to eat, what, all those kind of things, but their personal belongings, documents, information, and as you said, there's so many synergies to business life and business and the concerns and the worries of organizations. Okay, do we have everything in play? What if we're missing something? What if we get a cyber attack? Okay, what if we have, some key personnel quit because they don't find this environment uh, to their liking anymore? There's so many different life stories within business, and you see it, and I see it all the time. We try to dehumanize, and I don't say we as you and me personally, but I think a lot of companies try to depersonalize the workplace to the point where they don't want humans. They need obviously humans there because AI hasn't taken over everything yet, but they want humans in there, but they don't want them to be human. And I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, that's very, very astute. And in my leadership journey, both as an emergency manager and also project manager for many years, and now a leadership coach, and I help leaders of leaders grapple with this exact kind of dichotomy, or seemingly a dichotomy of, well, I need to really drive results and outcomes. Um, and then, but they're telling me that I need to be human. I don't understand how I can be vulnerable, empathetic, compassionate, all these other things, and still drive, shareholder value and all those things. Excuse me. And I think our workplaces have changed. I've seen it over the last, like when I started in a leadership game, if you were a new employee or new teammate, you weren't talking for 2 years. You're to be seen, not heard, all of those other things. You don't have an opinion. You're not seen, you're not heard, oh, blah, blah, blah. The list goes on and on. But the leaders that quote unquote get it, the ones that I work with, and again, particularly leaders of leaders for me, are folks that really get the human dimension of it. And team members want to be seen and they want to be heard. We are all human. And for us to discount that really means that we're actually missing an amazing opportunity to create a workplace and a company and an organization that has people in it that thrive, that actually don't mind coming to work on a Monday morning. And one of the things I've seen over the years is, employees they get a pit in their stomach coming to work because they're dreading the day. And people don't quit bad jobs, they quit bad managers and bad leaders. And that stat, if you look at workplace health, wellness and stress management and retention, all those other things, there's a direct correlator between the leader and the employee and those interactions. And uh, it's just devastating when I just see the behaviors, and I understand them, but the behaviors that I see some leaders and managers employ, um, it's amazing anybody works for them, quite frankly. And for us to connect, we have to be human. We have to be more human centered than we ever have been, and that's what I help leaders of leaders with.
I took over a healthcare organization. I've shared this on the show before, several years ago, actually more than, holy mackerel, it's been 11 years now. Yikes. Time flies, doesn't it? But I went into this organization. I actually left an organization that I liked and wasn't looking to move, but I had actually called there was an interim director of this organization and called them because they had a posting for a full-time registered dietitianist or a nutritionist. And I had a part-time one, and our budget unfortunately couldn't afford to make them full-time. And they were saying, I'm interested in full-time. So I saw the opportunity, same general area, from a commute-wise standpoint. So I reached out and I called them and I said, hey, I see you're hiring a full-time dietitian. And they laughed because they knew me a little bit. And they said, since when do you want to be a dietitian? I'm like, "Oh, no, thanks. I don't want, I hate people telling me what to eat. I don't want to be telling people what to eat. That's none of my business." But I told, I said, no, I have a really an all-star person. I don't want to lose, but they're looking for full time and I want to help them out. I think that'd be good for them. And we started talking, and then she said, "Oh, by the way, do you know anybody that would be looking for their role?" Like, and I knew that they were interim. I said, "Oh, you finally had enough of the place?" Because the organization had some history that I was aware of, and yeah, I've yeah, finally found my dream opportunity, and I told them that I was looking for one, but I would stay here as long until I found it, and I found it. So now they need, to bring somebody in, and they're not ready to hire yet, but they want to bring somebody else as an interim for a few months, and then they're going to go through the hiring process. So I was like, okay. So I said, well, let me have a chat with them. So I did. And we had a conversation back and forth. And, I saw the situation and it was a mess. They had toxic turnover, toxic workplace, no one talking with each other, the complete distrust between doctors, clinicians, everybody. And I'm like, "Who? That sounds like a fun job. I want in." And a lot of people think I'm crazy. Well, the people that know me know that I am crazy, but I looked at it as an opportunity. It's like, you know what? I think I might be able to do something here. And I did. And I was there for over 4 years, and turned it around. And we had, when I came in, they were averaging 86% annual turnover. So it's almost 9 out of 10 people every year leaving. And it wasn't a McDonald's. It wasn't a Harvey's. It was a medical center with master's level and above educated personnel that were just going, "This place is horrible. I'm out." So after a year of me being there, I reduced that number to 6%, so less than 1 out of 10. And how did I do it? I listened. I went in there, and it was really helpful that I was in as interim because I framed it that way at first. Maybe I should have, because I wasn't sure I was gonna stay with that role or not, because I was still doing some things with the place that I was going to leave. But just in case, it was like, I'm gonna keep that one toe in that water there, because if this is really bad, I'm gonna go right back into that pool. But I listened. I said, "Look, if you were in my seat as the interim director of this medical center, what would you do?"
Mm.
And they gave me the list. And I looked for the low-lying fruit, got quick board approval, and implemented a bunch of things right away that have been sitting there for years that no one bothered to ask. And I did it, and all of a sudden, that changed the temperature a little bit. And then I started to dig in deeper. Okay, where's the dialogue? Where's the conflict between people? Okay, let's start having some conversations around that and get and flush that out. Are they going to be uncomfortable? Of course, they will be. But we, with the end goal of, let's get to at least a state where we can collaborate with each other. May not like each other, at least we can collaborate with each other. And that's, but it was intentional. It's like, how do I, going back to what I said earlier, let's put some humanity into this. And organizations need to do that. And the comment you made, I definitely want to get your feedback on this. The comment you made a moment ago about, I have to be empathetic, but I have to hit these numbers. If you, think of a sports analogy. Okay, let's talk about, we'll talk about the Calgary Flames, for example. We'll pick on them. Okay, you have a coach that believes in their team, supports them, make sure that they have everything they need, the right trainers, they bring in the right coaches. If they need, their own personal goaltender coach, they're like, let's bring them in. We want you to be the best you can be. We want you to work with somebody that you want to work with to be comfortable. All of a sudden, that player recognizes, hey, they believe in me. They're taking care of me. They're doing this. Okay, wow, they're sending out birthday presents to our spouses. That's like, I was wondering why they wanted the birthday for those people. They just randomly do it out of fun, and just those little things, it brings back the humanity in it. And all of a sudden, it's like that player's going, "Yeah, you know what? I'm not feeling really good today, but you know what? This team believes in me, so I'm gonna suck it up and I'm gonna go out there anyway." Because discipline eats motivation for lunch 10 times out of 10. So, I was a little bit of a rant, but it was something that came to mind as you were talking about that. But the floor is back to you. I want to hear some of your thoughts on that and some other insights you have to share.
I absolutely love what you said on so many levels because this isn't complicated. And I don't want to sound trite, but in my lived experience with the leaders of leaders that I work with, and I work with leaders and leaders of leaders, typically revenues of $10 million or more, and even a company that's $4.8 billion in revenue, and like at their their executive level and all those other things. And at the end of the day, they grapple with the exact same things that an entrepreneur, a lot of your viewers and listeners would grapple with. It's just scale is different. But one of the key paradigm shifts that leaders, quote unquote, should make is realizing that what got you here won't get you there. And specifically, there are all sorts of things around that, the ability to actively listen and be present, put your phone away, all of the, those things. It's kind of common sense, but it's not that common, unfortunately. And just realizing that you're no longer in the widget business, you're not in the healthcare business, you're not in the engineering business or whatever. You're now in the people business. And people are incredibly difficult to manage at times because they are the variables are infinite of the human experience. And as leaders, a lot of times that makes us uncomfortable. And so as a result, if we don't want to have a quote unquote difficult conversation, or man, I don't want to have conflict, or the other side is, I like conflict, confrontation, we got to get her done, tough love, and all those things. Um, you start to shy away from the things that connect us, the ability to listen, the ability to involvement equals commitment. And I learned a long time ago, and that's where I created my order to chaos framework, is that leadership starts with me. It's actually not the team that is the important part of leadership. It starts with me. So anytime I go into a tornado, Hurricane Katrina, I was down there for that, a wildfire, an IT project management situation, a contract, whatever that looks like, I realized that it starts with me. How a team interacts with me, how it communicates with me is actually a reflection on me, not them. And so I realized that three pillars are important to me: self mastery, so getting your mind and body right. Leaders and leaders of leaders have to be incredibly productive, like supercharged productivity using flow states and all those things I talk about in my programming. And then the last part is this leadership piece, which is really the herding cats part of it. And leaders of leaders in particular, but anyone that goes up through the ranks, have to realize that leadership is influence. And if you picture like an archery target, and at the middle is a bullseye that represents you. Okay, so that's Michael, that's your stressors, your emotional regulation, your health, your physical state, all of those other things, your biases, your beliefs. But then if you go to the next ring, the concentric ring, picture that as your immediate team. And you have the ability, Michael, to directly influence and communicate with them, listen to them, all of those things. Hey, Michael, let's head into a meeting, all that. So you and I, we can jam face to face or virtually, but directly. Well, as the concentric circles grow and our organization grows, our ability to directly influence gets greatly diminished. So what do we have to do? We have to be intentional with, how do I now communicate at scale? How do I build a high performing culture at scale? It's not just about my immediate team. Now it's about the entire organization. What does that look like? And those are the things that I help leaders grapple with. And at the end of the day, it's really just being about intentionality and over indexing on the involvement equals commitment piece and listening to the subject matter experts, paying attention to the read the room, being the last one to speak so that everyone else feels heard. Like, there's just so many things there, but I think it really can come down to you're in the people business as leaders, and people are difficult to manage and deal with. They just are. Recognize that, and it's up to you, Michael, to ebb and flow exactly like you did in your interim situation, where it's like, okay, going into a new situation, I'm going to be flexible. I'm not going to be married to any outcome at all. But one thing I am going to do is I'm going to sit and I'm going to hear folks out. And in this case, it's probably the first time anyone's ever heard from them. And operationally, huge advantages, because who knows the tasks the best? Those doing the tasks. Like, that's novel. Well, that's a neat idea. And how many times have you heard in change management? Well, and IT is a great. IT project manager. We have a solution looking for a problem all the time. We've spent all this money on software and all this other stuff and say, hey, we got this thing. We're gonna just kind of wedge it in there. And people are like, hey, I'm the one using it, and no one asked me what I need. And so it's not incredibly complex, but it just takes a lot of intentionality as a leader, for sure.
Quoting the late Jim Rohn, it's easy to do, but it's also easy not to do. And yeah, there's a lot of people that just, that do that. And, uh, it is definitely a human business. And, going back real quick to that healthcare center, for me, as time went on over the years, and I got to know the people, then I knew, okay, this is, the terms of engagement with these individuals as an individual. You know that the pharmacist is, pretty laid back, chill, small talk, not a big fan of it. Just, be direct and encourage, where the mental health workers, you checked in on them a little bit more because they're dealing with patients. They're dealing with some really heavy things. And as a human, you hear, no, just like when you were talking about, the disaster scenes that you've witnessed, and you have to kind of, check in with yourself, going, you know, this is catastrophic, and your heart goes, and you start feeling bad, and you could be crying with the people as they're, crying over losing all of their things, or maybe loved ones. And it's just using the quote you mentioned a moment ago, read the room. It's like, understand how, they would like to be communicated with, and, be willing to change that, because people change too. And it's, again, eh, for me, I look at, because I'm a big sports fan. I love sports teams, and I look at teams that win championships, and especially if they're successful for quite a long time. And you go, okay, well, what's different about them? What are they doing? Or I mentioned this yesterday in an interview. College sports, college football, college basketball in particular, which get, most of the media attention in the States. Every 4 years, you have a complete turnover of your team. Everybody's different. All the players are different. Maybe some of your coaches too. Some coaches may have left and gone to, lead somewhere else, or it wasn't the right fit and they left, or you asked them to leave, whatever. But in those types of situations, you have to have a system in place. And as leaders, you have to figure out what that system is, not only for you, your own operating system, and also what are the system or systems we use in this organization to create the environment for people to thrive, to be the absolute best. Because if you want to hit those KPIs, if you want to hit those metrics, if you want to deliver results, if you want to gain market share, if you invest in your assets, in your equipment, and your people, then you're setting things up for success. You can buy the greatest, and this, IT systems. Oh yeah, we bought this. We went with this company, and now we have this state of the art CRM that everybody hates because it takes them 3 times as long to enter anything in. But it's number one in the world. Yeah, but it doesn't matter if it's number one in the world. Does it work for us? And I think people are too quick to choose. It's like, I'll use an analogy. You're standing at the grocery store, and all of a sudden you're like, "Ooh, I need a snack." You look, and in 5 seconds you grab something. Okay, that's something, a quick decision is fine. But when it comes to completely disrupting how your organization operates, whether it's tools, systems, protocols, whatnot, you got to spend some time on that, and you have to have the people using the systems to chime in and say what's going on, because up here in executive world, we see things up this way. Down in the trenches where the work's being done, they see things differently. And if you don't have that communication gap shortened, you're in for a world of trouble. And I've seen it time, and you have too, time and time and time again.
Yeah, there's a couple things that come to mind with that. One of which is, I think your audience, this would resonate with them. How many times you've been in a leadership position, you've had a meeting, You have the most amazing strategy. You're the smartest people in the room. Like you're like, this can't fail. And then it turns out maybe 2 weeks, a month, 2 months, whatever it is. It's like people on the front lines are like, we don't understand what's going on up there. Like there's such a disconnect. There's no alignment. And that's what I spent so much time on with leaders of leaders is creating that alignment between what's happening in the quote unquote boardroom and on the front lines. And I can tell you in my years of experience with emergency management, I get to see very, very clearly what works and what doesn't and how to align, whether it be 5,000 responders for a wildfire or 12 folks on a project or 500 people across the country working virtually, all places I've operated in. I'm able to see very, very quickly what works and what doesn't. And again, that goes back to my rinse and repeat, trying to find what are those kind of key leverage points. And if I may offer up a tangible tactic that I teach all the time in my programming, it's called the 131. And it starts with the fact that folks like autonomy, they want to be respected, they want to be heard, they want to be seen, all of those things that we're talking about here. And so the 131, the order to chaos 131 starts with the first one is the problem. You come to me with a problem. So, team member, instead of just dumping a bag of flaming dog poop on my desk, like, hey, Michael, you're the leader. You got to fix this. Like, hold on. Sorry, I don't even know what you're talking about. Well, you're in charge. And so we call that leader upward delegation. Well, that's fine, except you have 10 people on your team all dumping their stuff every day. So the first part is identify the problem, but not just a problem, but scope it out a bit. Do maybe a problem statement. Figure out what is the impact of this. What's the why is this a problem? Maybe some root cause, anything like that. So that's the first, and then the second part of it is the three. Come to me with three options, Michael. And one honestly can be do nothing. Like, so really come up with two options. So you come up with the problem, scoped a bit, three options, and then your recommendation is the third part of it, your recommendation. So now this is your involvement equals commitment, where now I'm coming to you as a leader. Let's say it was switched around and I come to you with the 131. I'm now invested in the solution. I've thought about it. I'm not just brain dumping. And then from the leader's perspective, selfishly, it frees the leader up cognitively to not have to sit there and analyze like crazy. It's much easier for us to look for patterns as leaders, neurologically, say yay or nay. We know cascading events because of our experience. We say, well, if we do that, then this. So what you can do is then decide on what the recommendation is, create the end state now to say, okay, perfect. This is what right looks like for us. And I'm going to support the heck out of you. That's the other part. It's not just go do it and then you'll never see me again. I'm going to support you. I'm going to remove barriers, give you resources, all those other things. But here's the catch. Accountability is a massive, massive element in our workplaces, maybe the lack thereof, or maybe too much. But what this also does is from a leadership perspective, yes, it lightens my cognitive load, but now you and I have agreed that this is what the option is. This is the recommendation. These are the timelines. This is what right looks like. And now I can hold you accountable to the standard. And as a leader, we are the standard bearers, leaders of leaders. You are the standard bearer. You cannot expect folks on your team to operate differently than what you do. That's hypocritical. It creates dissonance and those kinds of things. So that 131, I go into a lot more detail in a guide that I'll offer to your audience at the end, but it's incredibly empowering to your team members. It frees you up so much because now I can spend more time doing other things and thinking strategically. And it's something that we can start tomorrow. Like as soon as somebody hears this episode, they can be like, okay, 131. And you just build that as part of your operating system of how we operate as a team. And huge benefits for leaders for sure. I'm a huge advocate for that. I do it on emergency management situations. I do it all in my coaching. I do it in life, all of that. The 131 is a huge concept for us to grasp.
Yeah, and once you implement it, the first couple times it might be a little clunky, but then it allows you to be prepared, both as a leader and as somebody on the front lines, middle management, upper management, executive management. You've done your homework, so you don't just come in and using your analogy, dropping the bag of flaming dog crap on the desk and going, "Hey, fix this." It's like, well, fix what? Other than the burn stain on my desk and the stink that's going to be in this office for a couple of weeks. I know I got to fix that, but what else do I need to fix? What it does is it it forces or encourages, depending on how you look at it, people to think and dig a little deeper into the situation. Because what I've found when I do an exercise like that, when I'm writing something out and mapping it out, then sometimes clarity will kick in and go, yeah, maybe this isn't the biggest problem that I have right now based on some other things. Or I may have just come up with a solution just writing all of this out because things bounce around in here. This is a junk drawer sometimes. It doesn't do the greatest job of segmenting things. I mean, some things it does great, but the brain sometimes it just has all the information, and they just say use the search bar and find what you're looking for. But sometimes it's like let's get it into a visible thing where we can go, oh, that's why, you see exercises at retreats or coaching sessions, when they'll throw post-it notes on the wall and get everything together. And time again, everybody's like all these different thoughts, and all of a sudden they throw all the notes all over the place. And then the facilitator or, senior leader will start organizing it. Next thing you know, you look at it and you go, the map is clear. I see where we need to go. And everybody goes, wow. Now, the big step is, will they actually implement it? And that's a completely different conversation for another show. But I've really enjoyed this conversation. Where can people find out more about you, the 131, and everything else you're doing?
So thank you very much for the opportunity. So a couple of things or a couple of areas. So on Instagram, DDB Leadership, or on LinkedIn. And I'll just ask folks to DM me the word hashtag Team Michael, and you'll get my Order to Chaos principles, my guide. But because I've been very appreciative of this opportunity as part of my leadership program, I do a lot of playbooks and frameworks and whatnot. So there's a playbook for executive assistants. And I know that is something that folks grapple with a lot, particularly leaders of leaders. They're so busy and all these other things, and they want to hire, but they don't have any structure or framework. Well, I've done the homework for you. So normally you just get it in my programs, the EA playbook, but as part of that DM or a message on LinkedIn, you'll get the guide plus the playbook, which alone will save you so much time and effort. So DM me at DDB Leadership or LinkedIn. I'll send you the guide as well as the EA playbook. I'd be more than happy to do that.
Daryl, I appreciate that. That's very generous of you, and I highly encourage everybody to take advantage of that. Even if you don't have an EA yet, or you have an EA that has been with you since the beginning of time, you can always learn something new and find ways to improve things. Because if you can improve yourself, then the work you do improves, and the impact you have on humanity improves. So, Daryl, again, thank you so much for your show or for being on the show today. Really appreciate your time today.
Thank you very much.